Corrupted sovereign, the residue step, the world is her skin. Corrupted world, the year is 3100s and the world is a tilted bowl. In the grand city, the elites live in a curated illusion. They breathe air that smells of nothing and drink water clearer than the sky. They believe they deserve this peace, while they label the rest of us as the cause of the earth's wrath. To them, we aren't people, we are the residue. I was born in the grey belt, the industrial ring that never sleeps. My parents were the lucky ones, the legion, quiet and efficient. My father's ears are dead to everything but the scream of the turbines, and my mother's lungs are filled with the dust of 1,000 luxury fabric that she'll never wear. The only hope was that I would be better, that I would be high viable and earn a life that was truly mine. But I was born with the industry vertigo. The constant grinding of the world made my footsteps heavy and my hands shake. I was a broken gear in a machine that demands perfection. To hide my clumsiness, my parents brought me a band stabilizer. It was an expensive, rusted mechanical braces for my ankles, meant to fix my stumble. But it can only do so much against a world that never stopped vibrating. Humanity has long believed that every element has its own deity. The elites pray every day, casting blame on the lower classes for the environmental collapse, claiming we never met time to pray. They worship the sovereign, the androgynous gods of the elements, Aris, Kalins, Aethel, Poro, and Aurus. But the scholar had noticed a rot they called divine stagnation. While the elites burned their incense at their golden altars, the true sovereign are decaying. The shrine remained beautiful, perhaps a trick of the light or a cruel joke, but the air surrounding them has turned so gloomy and thick that no scholar dares to linger. The elites pray for their prosperity, but the gods are screaming back in the language of earthquakes and smog. They think their prayers buy safety. The scholars know they are only buying time. Deep in their neat silent tomb, the gods are looking for a way to give their pen back to the ones who built them. Vessels that leak. Our home was less a house and more a hollow in the machinery, drenched in the scent of oil and ozone. Our dinner table that was a slab of repurposed scrap, and tonight it hummed with the rhythm of the borrowed vibration coming through the floorboard. Silas sat heavily, his felt itched with iron dust that no amount of grey water could wash away. He reached down, his callous finger tightening a bolt on my right ankle brace. It loose again, Elara, he raps, his voice a dry rattle. You have to keep them tight. If you stumble again, the inspector will mark you as unworthy. They'll send you to the scene. I try, father, I whispered. But even as I spoke, the room tilted. Somewhere, miles away in the industrial dark, a turbine had snapped, and I felt the shiver of it in my marrow. A secret language only my bones understand. Elena placed a bowl of thin synthetic balls in front of me. Her fingers were stained a permanent neon blue from the dyes of the textile mills. She touched my hand. Her skin felt like a sandpaper against mine. He's right, little bird. We can't lose this station. If you come to the grand city, you can buy the real stabilizer, the one made of gold and magnets. You won't feel the shaking there. I look at them, my parents who were pouring their life into a vessel that leaked. I look at the braces, the expensive rusted miracle they had sacrificed their health to buy, and felt the vertigo swell. The world wasn't shaking, it was trying to throw me off. I prayed to the sovereign for balance, but I was praying to my tormentors. They were the one pulling the world out under my feet. Sung. The next morning, the roar hum was louder than usual. It didn't just vibrate, it shrieked. I stood at the assembly line, my ankle locked into the rusted stabilizer. My task was simple, sorting the chemical filters for the Grand City water supply. My hands shook, but I gripped the cold metal until my knuckles turned white. For Silas, for Elena, I whispered to myself. Then, It happened. A miles beneath the ocean surface, a massive tectonic plate shifted, or perhaps or simply groaned in his sleep. I felt a sudden bruising surge of pressure in my chest. To everyone else, it was just a quiet Tuesday. To me, it was as if the floor had turned into liquid. The invasive vertigo didn't just tilt the world, it inverted it. I heard a sickening crack, not from the machine, but from my right brace. The rusted bolt my father had tightened just hours ago snapped under the weight of my spasm. I fell. I didn't just fall. I collided with the main conveyor. A vat of neon blue dye, the same dye that stained my mother's hand, toppled over, drenching the pristine filter destined for the grand city. The blue liquid spread like a confession of my failure. Silent followed, deadlier than the noise. The inspector appeared from the shadow of the catwalk, his silver mask reflecting my terrified face. He didn't ask if I was hurt. He simply pressed a button on his tablet. Incident report, biological failure, reclassification, expired residue. Wait, I gasped, trying to stand. I can fix it. I can clean it. The machine does not repair broken gears. The inspector's voice was muffled by his filter. It replaces them. You are no longer viable for the gray belt. You are being redirected to the sink for final disposal. Two wardens grabbed my arms. I didn't even get to say goodbye. I didn't get to tell Silas I was sorry for breaking the miracle he brought me. As they dragged me towards the outfall chute, the last thing I saw was the blue dye on the floor, the exact color of the sky the eldest promised us, now swirling down the drain. The Erasure. The fall was a blur of steel and shame. As the outfall chute spat me out, I realized I hadn't just lost my job. I had been erased. In the grey belt, there are no goodbyes for the unworthy. My name would be scrubbed from the sector log, and my parents would be forced to live in a house that felt too quiet, forbidden from ever speak my name again. I had crushed the hope. I was a ghost who was still breathing, and the guilt felt heavier than the residue rag clinging to my skin. My once stiff uniform now rotted and fused with the oily bile of the sink. The fabric so heavy with pollutants, it felt like wearing the wool filled as a second skin. I stood at the black delta. The water didn't ripple. It heaved like a thick bruised lung. It was a graveyard of the grand city's excess, sleek with iridescent oil and choked by mountains of synthetic bone. The cleaning machine they gave me, a handheld skimmer, felt like a toothpick against a mountain. How could someone who couldn't even walk across a room without stumbling clean an ocean of bile? Suddenly, my industry vertigo flared with a violence that brought me to my knees. The air turned stagnant, as if hours had sucked the oxygen out of the sky. The distant scream of the factories, the roar hum, cut to a dead, terrifying silence. Beneath me, the ground of the sink groaned, the compressed thresh of calyx shifting to lock my feet in place. The tide didn't rush in, it heaved upwards. From the center of a massive oil slick, a figure rose. He was tall, androgynous, and possessed a beauty that felt like a threat. His skin was the color of a drowned moon, but beneath it, his veins pulsed with thick obsidian petroleum. This was Maurice. He didn't walk. He glided over the surface of the sludge, his eye fixed on me with a hunger that wasn't for love, but for relief. I felt the invisible weight of the others behind him, the sting of ash, the pressure of the stars. Maurice reached me, his hand translucent and cold as deep sea ice. "The filter has arrived," he whispered, his voice the sound of 1,000 drowning waves. "The human has sent us a girl to bleed for their sin. You will be my bright little bird. You will hold the blackness so I don't have to." Blood tapped bright. My world went blank as Maurice spoke. Filter, bright, depth. The world felt like stone dropping into a dark well. I looked at him, the great sovereign of the tides, and my heart jolted. He was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at, but he was wrong. His translucent skin didn't skimmer with sea foam. It was stained with the iridescent rot of 1,000 oil spills. Wait, why me? I gasped, my voice breaking against the heavy silence of the sink. I collapsed to my knee in the techno-frozen mud. I prayed to the sovereign every day. I couldn't afford the incense, but I offered my breath. I offered my word. Please, have mercy. Mars didn't blink. Behind him, the atmosphere didn't just change, it shook. One by one, the others manifested, not as God, but as disaster. Ours appeared suddenly, suffocating fog that smelled of burning rubber, stinging my eyes shut. Voro didn't speak. He arrived as a vibration so intense it made the feeling in my teeth ache. My vertigo flared, the world is spinning until I had to press my face into the dirt. Calyx and Ether stood like silent jack pillar, watching me as one might watch a lab animal suffering. The Alice pray for wealth, Maris said, his voice a cold flash of salt water. He stepped onto the mud, the black oil in his vein pulsing. You prayed for mercy. Neither removed the lid from my blood, neither pulls the plastic from Calyx's joint. We don't want your prayers, little bird, Voro's voice vibrated through the air. We want a place to put the pain. Maris reached down and gripped my wrist. The scream died in my throat. It didn't feel like a touch. It felt like he had opened a valve and poured a river of liquid mercury into my marrow. My industry vertigo exploded into a blinding white light. Then, the lidless appeared. From the spot where his finger pressed into my skin, thin black metallic veins began to crawl. They branched out like delicate frozen lightning, weaving a pattern of dark jewelry beneath my skin. It was beautiful. It was hideous. It was the mark of a slave. Look, ours raps, a cloud of grey ash falling from his lip as he leaned in. A dry, violent cough tore through me. When I pulled my hand away, my palm was smeared with thick grey soot. My lungs felt heavy as if I was breathing in the exhaust of 1,000 factories. A sudden unnatural heat washed over me. My skin turned a feverish red, not the heat of a sickness, but the atmospheric fever of a wolf whose eyes were melting. She is a perfect mirror, Calyx rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. He touched my shoulder, and where he poked, the skin turned dry and cracked like a parched desert. Every spill, every burn, every scar we carry, she will feel it now. She is the sponge for our rock. Maris looked down at me. For a split second, I saw his eyes soften, not with love, but with the relief of a man who had finally put down a heavy burden. He leaned down, his oil-stained hair brushing my cheek. The contract is sealed, Elara, he whispered. You are the bride of the abyss. If you die, the world dies with you. So, try to breathe. Behold your death. I did as I was told, but existing has become an act of war. The pen was jagged, indescribable thing. It felt as if my nervous system had been rewired with barbed wire. Ether, who had been a silent, shimmering ghost of satellite chart and cold vacuum, finally spoke. His voice didn't come from his throat, it vibrated from the stars themselves. You are our voice, little mirror, he hummed. You shall carry our agony back to the humans so they understand the depth they own. When you scream, they will finally hear the earth screaming. I tried to beg, to say I was just a woman, but I couldn't find my voice. I only coughed up a cloud of thick sulfur smoke in return. Miles didn't wait for recovery. He scooped me into his cold, translucent arm and began to glide. We didn't walk. We moved like a dark tide over the mountains of synthetic plastic and crushed metal. The ivory soaring followed like a funeral procession. Ours swirling as a toxic wind, Boro a silent turmoil, Calyx a shifting of the earth. Then ours exhaled, a gust of chemical mist lifted us into the sky. From the gray belt, I thought I knew the world was dirty. I was wrong. From the sky, the reality was a nightmare. The green forests from the history book were long gone, replaced by the gray slab, a crust of concrete and rust. The ocean weren't blue. They were vast, suffocating lakes of black bile, choked with the white bones of dead coral and millions of tons of human trash. It wasn't a planet anymore. It was a corpse. How can I clean this? I whispered, my tears turning to gray mud against my cheek. I am just her one girl. I am just residue. Morris tightened his grip, his petroleum black fang pulsing against my skin. He looked out at the horizon at the glowing fake light of the grand city. You don't clean it with your hands, Elara, he raps. You clean it with your life. The ecological decay in your blood is a countdown. Every time they poison the water, your heart will skip. Every time they burn the forest, your skin will blister. You are the barometer of their extinction. As they glide over the blackened horizon, Mars held Elara close, not out of affection, but to ensure she survived the download of information. Listen, little bird, Mars raps, his breath smelling of deep sea salt and gasoline. The human call this a curse. We call it the ecological decay. It is a bridge between our suffering and your flesh. You have 3 stages to endure before the end. First, your body is a reflection. When the elites spill oil, your blood thickens. When they burn the sky for a long filled with ash, you will feel every wound they inflict on us. Second, when the earth's temperature rises, so will yours. When you begin to glow with the heat of a dying sun, the grand city's fountain will turn to bile. That is our final warning. The last stage will be when your heart stops. Because of the world is too heavy, the decay will not die with you. It will burst from your skin as a plague. We will let your residue wash back into the grand city until every human cough up the same as you do. After he finished his explanation, I saw the edge of the center where the grand city resided. The flight ended abruptly at the massive shimmering gates that separated the Sing from the grey belt. Ours struck the wind. I tumbled onto the hard, sterile concrete. A warden stood at the gate, his silver mask gleaming in the artificial light. He raised his taser gun, ready to drive away the residue, until he saw who was with me. The 5 sovereigns stood behind me like a wall of divine wrath. The warden guns dropped to the ground. He didn't see the woman. He saw a nightmare. I tried to reach out, but my hand was mapped with the shimmering lit lace. Every time I took a breath, a puff of grey soot escaped my lips. My skin was so hot it caused the condensation on the warden mask to sizzle. Behold your death, Boris' voice boomed, vibrating the very gate until the metal groaned. She is the earth you broke, Morris added, his eyes glowing with a gold obsidian light. Look at her. Every mark on her skin is a sin you've committed. If she withers, so do you. With a final, crushing purge of air, the gods vanished into the smoke, leaving me shivering on the ground. The warden backed away in terror, crossing himself. To him, I wasn't a human being. I was a living curse, a walking plague sent by the gods to remind them that the earth was tired of being silent. The containment. I lay on the concrete for what felt like hours, my consciousness flickering like a dying bulb. Workers from the grey belt, people who used to be my peers, passed by in a blur of terror. They no longer see Elara, the clumsy girl who worked at the assembly line. I was a breathing piece of the sink now, a living pollutant spat back at them by the elements. The whisper began like a fire in dry grass. The residue had been cursed. The tide had sent a messenger. The chaos peaked when the grand city scholars arrived. They descended in sleek, pressurized transport, looking like a silver beetles in the heavy hazmat suit. They didn't touch me with their hand. They used magnetic clamps to hoist my shivering, feverish body into a bio-isolated chamber, a glass cage designed to contain pathogens. As the transport rose towards the grand city, my smoke cough left thick gray streak on the transparent wall. Through the maze, I heard them whispering. Her core temperature is 45 degrees Celsius, one scholar muttered, his voice tiny through his suit combs. She should be dead, but she's radiating. Look at the lead lace. It isn't just on her skin, it's anchoring to her nervous system. We entered a laboratory that screamed of cold clinical violence. High-tech sensor, word, and scanner tried to map my disease, but the screen only flickered to static every time I took a breath. The scholars were frantic, cornering the warden, who had seen the Sovereign. Did they touch her? Did they speak? Did they look polluted? Suddenly, the room went silent. The door hissed open, and Cyrus Vane stepped into the room. He was the only one not wearing a mask. He didn't need one. The air in this sector had been scrubbed at a cost of millions just for his arrival. His white suit was so pristine it seemed to repel the light. His eyes were as cold as the mountain peak. This was the man who owned the world. The Vane family had spent 3 centuries building this wonderland upon the bones of the earth. They were the untouchable, the architect of the great lie. They told the public that the elements were pleased with their progress, that the Vanes were the only one pure enough to hear the sovereign whisper. He didn't look at me as a person. He looked at me the way a chef looked at a boiled piece of meat. For a split second, our eye met, and he winced, his lip curling in a visceral twitch of disgust. Why is it still breathing? Ben's voice was smooth, cultured, and utterly devoid of pity. Dark to Vane, she is the sovereign mirror, a scholar stammered. The god Mary's claimed she is there. I don't care what the folklore said, Vane interrupted, waving a hand to signal the scholar to pull the heavy lit curtain shut over my glass cage. He turned away, adjusting his silk cuff. It's rubbish. Dangerous, biohazardous rubbish. Seal the containment and begins the purification test. He stopped at the door, his back to me. If the gods want to send a message, they will talk directly to me. I am the only one worth of their audience. This thing is nothing but a glitch in the system. Scrub it. Protocol 0. Inside the biochamber, the air grew heavy with the sterile scent of death. Through the hazy glass, I watched the scholars prepare Protocol 0. They handled a pressurized canister of Vane's scrub, the same caustic proprietary chemical the elite force Residue to use when they scrub the factory drains. They call it a cleaner, but to the earth, it was always a slow poison. They were terrified of the lead lace, treating me not like a human, but like an unexploded bomb. They only used cold robotic arm to interact with me. I was trapped in a haze of fever, my vision swimming, until a sudden, white-hot agony erupted in my left hand. It wasn't just burn, it was a dissolution. I felt the Vane scrub trying to eat through my skin, and in that moment I understood. This is what the soil feels. Every time we throw this cleaner into the ground, we are setting the earth on fire. I screamed, but the sound was muffled like the glass, leaving me alone with a pain the element had endured for centuries. Then they turned the spray toward my face, the white suit of the ecological decay billowed from my lung, clashing with the chemical mist. I looked at the scholar. Their eyes weren't filled with pity. They were fixed on the tablets, recording the way my flesh bubbled. To them, I wasn't Elara anymore. I was a stain they were failing to bleach. A violent tremor suddenly shook the laboratory. While the scholars scrambled to steady their equipment, I felt it in my marrow. Miles away, a tectonic plate had buckled in sympathy with my scream. The industrial vertigo and the chemical agony merged into one terrifying frequency. The pH isn't high enough, my scholar muttered, his voice cold and analytical. The leakless is resistant. We need to increase the acidity, strip the pollutant down to the bone if we have to. Why me, I thought, as the machine hummed back to life for a second while. Why can't I hear the vibration of a dying world, while they hear nothing but the sound of their own progress? The unbreakable stain. For 3 days straight, I was a battlefield. The van scrub had stripped away the person I used to be, leaving behind raw, corroded flesh that no longer looked human. My hands and face were mapped of chemical burns, yet beneath the wound, the leakless only grew thicker, glowing with a dark Defiant light. Outside of the lab, the world was screaming with me. Severe earthquakes rattled the grand city foundation, and a toxic haze settled over the spire, phenomenon that vents usually flush into the grey belt before the elves could notice. I floated in a sea of pain, barely hearing the scholars' frantic debates. My body was a dying ecosystem, fighting to survive, just as the earth fought its own slow strangulation. Unbeknown to me, Cyrus' pain was unraveling. The reports from Protocol Zero were a litany of failures. He had threatened the wardens, silenced the grey belt troopers, and wiped the surveillance tab, desperate to hide the messenger from a public that still believed his lie. I am the poorest man on this floating rock, I heard him roar from the observation deck, his voice cracking. I gave them the machine. I gave them the cleaners. If the sovereign are angry, they should blame the residue for failing to scrub the sink, not me. Then came the new command. If the girl could not be dissolved, she should be dismantled. I was startled awake by a high-pitched mechanical shriek. To my right, a surgical saw designed to cut through industrial steel was lowered towards my arm. I was too weak to move, too tired to scream. I could only watch the diamond-tipped teeth beat into my wrist. Snap! The blade didn't cut. It shattered. Shards of metal flew across the room, embedding themselves in the sterile walls. The leakless beneath my skin hadn't just resisted, it had rejected the machine. My skin was no longer flesh, it was the crush of the earth, and it would not be broken by the tools of the man who ruined it. What? Vince's voice was a panic shriek. He rushed to the glass. His pristine white suit finally stained with the grey soot leaking from my chamber. She should be in pieces. She belonged in the incinerator with the rest of the trash. Director Vane, a scholar whispered, trembling. The biological matter densified. We cannot penetrate the surface. She's not just a messenger anymore. She's a shield. Cyrus looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the terror behind his cold eye. He wasn't worried about my pain. He was worried about his throne. If the people saw me, indestructible, cursed, and chosen, his empire of lies would crumble. Seal the wing, Van hissed, his face twisting into a mask of madness. No one enters, no one leaves. If we cannot break her, we will study her until we find the nerve that makes her scream. We don't stop until the messenger is silent. As the heavy lead curtain pulled sharp, plunging me into darkness, a new vibration hummed in my chest. It wasn't the vertigo, it was a cold. The scholars were too busy trying to hide the truth to realize the warning was over. The sing were rising, and I was the only one who knew how to swim.